Today, I thought it would add value to hear from a local speech therapist and life coach on her perspective for why we need to vary our teaching styles and incorporate new ideas on a regular basis. She has a PhD in speech pathology, is a certified life coach and transformational coach, and has recently added children's author to her credentials. Dr. Penelope Alison, welcome. I feel so privileged to have you here with us today, and I am so excited because I know you have so much to share.
Well, I can't thank you enough for having me. I think collaboration across fields adds so much value, and often we can get so caught up in our own field and our own colleagues, we forget that there's so much value. I know I learn so much from you every day in what I'm doing, and I don't get in the swimming pool. So thank you for having me here.
So Penelope and I first met when she and her hubby John brought their little baby to swimming lessons. So how many years have your kiddies been swimming with us now?
5.
Wow.
And that's the mark of success, when you bring your baby just to make sure they're safe, but you stay because you see the value in the lesson beyond the safety.
Absolutely. Now, I find it absolutely fascinating that you don't like to get into swimming pools, right?
I do not get into swimming pools. I have a big thing about dead skin cells.
So, Penelope and you and I have had many discussions about teaching and learning, and we know that no two people or kiddies learn the same way. Can you explain a little bit more?
Well, there's 2 ways to even approach that answer. The first thing that I know just from a life coaching perspective is that everybody has their own map of the world that we've been gifted. So it's our own way of seeing information that comes towards us, whether it's because you have been culturally trained, it's your family values that helps shape the way you interpret information. There's a variety of ways that influences each person's view of the world. So on top of that, you also have your genetic loading, which will lend some of your clients will be more visual, and some of your clients will be more auditory. You'll have your kinesthetic learners. You'll have your learners that don't want kinesthetic or touch, feel, sensory input. So they might be more sensory defensive in the water. And just knowing that when you get in the pool with 3 or 4, 5 little people, they each have their own way of processing your information, makes a big difference. So your learners that are auditory, you can give them a verbal directive and tell them what they need to do. They'll go flying across the pool. Then you might have a visual learner who needs to see you do it. They need to see the peers do it. They need to see multiple visuals to do it. And then they might have the courage to try. And then you might have the kinesthetic learners. I know quite a few of the little ones I've watched in the pool during lessons. They need to know that they're safe. So that step in the pool is their boundary at first, or the edge of the pool. They need to touch something solid to know that they're okay. That's a kinesthetic feedback in the pool. And you have to look for those, and you have to be in tune with each client on an individual lesson within a group lesson. So just knowing that the different learning styles is very valuable, I think, to anybody in any field. Yeah.
Now, I find this so interesting, and there's actually an exercise or test that you can do to determine which is your learning style, right?
There's probably lots of examples if you look them up. I know the one I use as a life coach is a representational exercise. So it's called eliciting the primary representational system. And that comes from Burke and Isabel Esterhazy, who do the Transformation Academy in Pretoria. But we use that, and you answer a series of questions, and you based on your answers, it shows whether you are more auditory or visual. Are you more kinesthetic? And then based on that, you will look for those cues in people that share a similar trait to you. You may even verbalize in that way. So some people use more touchy-feely language if they're kinesthetic. I know if you tell me something, I'm not auditory. I have to write it down and see it in print. I'm very visual. So just, yeah, it's a good exercise if you're curious to see what you are. There are even people out there that are auditory digital, and they have to talk themselves through tasks. You might find a little person in your pool telling themselves after you've said it, and you think they're talking, but they might be telling themselves what they need to do next. That's why it's good for some teachers to have children repeat what I've said. That sometimes helps those children talk themselves through the task.
So for us as swimming teachers, how can we adapt our lessons to make sure that we are including all learning styles within our teaching style?
Well, I think not everybody's else is going to be forgiving, that you won't know right away, and it'll come out over time. You will initially, you might think somebody is more auditory, and then you realize that when you're talking to them, they're singing and dancing in another space, and they weren't auditory after all. But if you get down into their space and you adapt and you try different tricks, such as getting into their level of perception, so whether you need to come down or you need to change your tone, your pitch. Some children, you get louder, they still not in tune with you, but if you come down into their space and talk directly to them, oh, hello, there they are. So it just takes time to puzzle that out with each individual. And but the key thing is to remember that within a group, and I know it's one more thing on top of the swim lesson, within the group, you just have to always teach to the individual within the group. And that's the challenge, juggling that comes with time and experience. Yeah.
Yes, because not all kiddies develop at the same pace, right?
Exactly. So now we've talked about the life coaching perspective. To put my speech therapy hat on, we know that children have 6 developmental domains that they all are competing at the same time. Within each individual little soul in your pool, you've got a child who's growing from a physical domain, a motor domain, perceptual domain, cognitive ability, personal social ability, and then language, which is further broken down into receptive or hearing language and expressive verbal language. So that will impact across all disciplines. No child will have the same development at the same time, and it's a give and take process. So while one child might have growths and be able to verbalize, they may not have the physical ability that matches a peer who can swim well and has gross motor ability, but isn't talking so well. So that's an added challenge. And you just have to go with the strengths and work within that child's strengths to build up the areas that still need to grow, and understand that they might have done something for you last week, but the next week they need more practice to do it again.
Yes, I think we definitely find that within our lessons, that even if we group children to the same age, they're not necessarily the same ability. So generally speaking, would you suggest within a swimming lesson that we group children to their age or to their ability?
I think that initially it makes sense to group children from an age perspective until you have a better idea of their ability. You won't know that ability without having tested that. And from a size and safety, because the curve of learning will generally be the bell curve. So most of your children of the same age will present with similar skill sets. We do know that. But then you're going to have your outliers. So some will be advanced and some might be delayed in certain areas which are critical for swimming skills. And so you just need to watch that And then if you've got an older child with a younger group, you just celebrate their skill set so they're not even aware that there's an age gap difference, and it doesn't really matter, so that their social emotional well-being isn't impacted by age groups. That we're all just here to have fun, and it doesn't matter what age you are from that. But I do think that for the most part, you start out by grouping children per age. I know we used to group in my speech therapy setting in the schools. I would group by age, and then slowly but surely you would see that some of the children had delayed language, would need to go into a lower group. Or a child with a speech sound disorder could work with a child with a language disorder, because the one models and the other one goes, wow, that's what I should be doing. Then the other one speaks clearly. And the child with the speech sound disorder goes, oh, that's a good model. So you use each other's strengths no matter what the age or whatever the gap in the learning is.
I think that is so important. And often within our lessons, we find that even if we're grouping within the same age, there's one child that might be so much bigger or developed faster. So, and sometimes it's quite difficult not to expect more of that child. So if you had to move them up into a different age group, you're expecting them to be able to listen to be able to recognize and listen what you're teaching, even with the group of children that are maybe a lot older than them. And I think that's something that we have to be very mindful of. So with learning styles and complex developmental domains to consider, we as swimming teachers have quite a challenge in a very stimulating environment. Would you agree?
Yes. All teachers, every teacher in any area. Yes. Very challenging. You've got the added complexity of safety in the pool. No one's going to drown in a speech therapy session, but so you have that added responsibility above and beyond. And the challenge is to keep your audience captive. And while they may be captive in a pool, when I say captive audience, you have to be colorful and bright and engaging and get them into with you, whether they don't have to look at you, because I know from my experience with children on the autism spectrum, they may not be looking at you. It doesn't mean they're not with you. So you just have to keep in mind that, especially today in the televisual age and what children have been exposed to, they are looking for quick sound bites and fast-paced moving visual reward at all times. And so we're producing these children that need that heightened, colorful, emotional, verbal, language-rich environment to keep them with you. And
I think that is definitely a challenge for all teachers nowadays. I mean, when we were growing up, there was, the TV just used to be like a dull screen. And nowadays it is so vibrant and so much going on that kiddies are programmed into that now.
Yes, absolutely. And you'll have cultural diversity. So you will have some children that have more screen time than others, just because maybe both parents are working and aren't there to supervise activities away from the screen. You might have children that their family doesn't have a history of swimming. It was never an important thing until they went to school, and then the value sets increased. So you've got televisual error and cultural diversity working against you that you'll have to bring in and find a way to unite the group and keep everyone engaged.
So what does this mean to us as swimming teachers?
Well, to bind it all together, if you've got somebody who's processing visually versus auditory versus kinesthetic with touch and feel, and now you've got children that have all these different developmental domains that they're also working with, plus the televisual and the cultural, when you add all of that together, it just reinforces the need for multimodal teaching. So that's where the value is going to come in. Whether you've got greater language variety, you're repeating things on a regular basis, you're adding color. When I say that, I know when I used to lecture at the university, I could go in and provide all the information necessary for the lecture. But if I was in love with what I was teaching, then I could completely convert the masses into my loved area, which is what you're trying to do for the love of teaching of swimming. So being more bright and making it fun to learn, and not necessarily a boring swimming lesson. You're there to have fun. You happen to learn stroke correction while you're having fun. Songs, singing, rhyming, lots of language-rich activities. So when you say to my children, grab the sweeties, or you've got all sorts, the wheels on the bus that you do, that's what's going to bring the kids back for more. And they'll talk about it when they're not there. And we know from some of the great swimmers, the ones that can visualize what they're doing in the pool second by second are the ones that go home with the Olympic medals. So that visualization, you provide visualization outside the pool when you create a model with a visual content. So all of those things. Same thing, Malcolm Gladwell talks about the 10,000 hour rule in his book Outliers. And you have to ask yourself as a swim teacher, do you want to be the swim teacher who just drills the children across the pool until they get it right and they've got their 10,000 hours? Or do you want to be remembered for varying your tone, your pitch, your heart-based entertainment, and that's how they got their hours? They loved every moment of it. So now their heart and their mind are invested into what you've got going on in the pool, not just muscle memory.
I think we can definitely relate to this as swimming teachers, and then also relate it back to our swim school brand. What do we want to represent, and what do we want our brand to represent, and how important is that to who we teach? So yeah, do you have any more examples that you can give with regards to that?
Well, it used to be that whoever could master the skill set or had the IQ set were the leaders in any given field. And we now know that there's a gap between the leaders who have the IQ and the traditional base training and those that have the EQ, the emotional quotient. You want your swim school to be known for heart, because you can teach any which way you want, but if those children leave empowered with heart, they'll have a greater success with the skill set that you've taught them. And I think that's what I'm trying to say. So yeah, it might be difficult to get out the songs and get out the colors. And my favorite thing that you have at school is your froggy hats. Get out the bright green froggy hats and really capture everybody's attention with what you're doing, so that we all love it and we all invested, not just the kids in the pool, the people outside the pool, but you don't worry about those. You're just getting the buy-in with your heart. And if you drive with your heart, anything is possible. I'm sure you can give many examples of what you do in your pool to keep those kiddies invested and involved.
Yes, that is so true. You don't always have to sing, and you can do like rhyming, rhythm. You can actually do like music. You can play music either by making sounds on the water or with a cup, and just trying to heighten all those senses of your kiddies to get them engaged, using different equipment. Just trying to encourage your kiddies and tap into all those different learning styles, especially. So not necessarily if somebody's not listening to you, don't have to raise your voice louder and louder and louder, because they're just going to zone out. But actually, like you say, vary your tone, start to whisper, and then they kind of draw near to you. So those teachers that really don't like to sing, what can you suggest?
You don't have to use every trick in the bag, but you have to enjoy the tricks in your bag. So from my perspective, I know when I started out as a speech therapist in the late 1990s, not to age myself, but it was all I could do just to get across the goals I had in mind and the content that I wanted to cover in my small groups. And if you asked me in those days how I was going to make it fun wasn't on my agenda. Meeting the goals, because I was too overwhelmed by the process as it was. And then with time and experience, I realized that the color and the games and the singing, it wasn't an additional challenge. It was the bonus. It made it fun for everybody. And it got all of us growing and everybody having a good time. And then I would look down and the session would be over before I'd even thought it would begin. And I remember thinking, oh, how did that happen so quickly? And if it's something that you're not comfortable with, then just set aside 5 minutes of an activity. Often I would take my 30-minute speech therapy sessions and break them into 5 minutes of this, 5 minutes of that. So if I wasn't comfortable singing, it was such a short amount of time, I could get over that. And when you've got more and more of those colorful, inspiring things, your sessions end up being more fun for you. Then your heart's in it, then their heart's in it. The whole energy is up. Even now, if I've 20 odd years down the road, if I'm feeling like I'm just not passionate about what I'm doing, I immediately go back to find what else could I add? What haven't I thought of to add to my sessions? Now with teenage boys, how do I bring in something that's going to grasp their attention? So something current, something fun. I've had to learn about TikTok. I've had to learn about, so just always, you want to think about yourself as learning new skills, but then you also have to stay with your age group and what's fun for them. So,
I think it's important to take into consideration that we need to keep our kiddies engaged. And it doesn't necessarily have to be singing songs or rhymes throughout the lesson, but even if, as you say, just incorporate a part of your lesson, whether it's just the introduction or just the playtime that is or halfway through, you just need to adapt to be able to do that. And I think I know that some of my teachers, or I also included in my lessons, is actually not necessarily any of those things, but just actually doing a theme. So telling a story throughout the lesson, whether it is a happy birthday theme, for example. But how does that relate to learning styles?
Well, I think if you are using a lot of variety in your session, and you are doing visual stuff, auditory stuff, kinesthetic stuff, you're going to tap into all the learning styles within your group. So somebody might not catch on to the language you used, but they'll catch on to the visual gesture that you might have paired with it. Or if you vary your pitch, the person that wasn't listening to you suddenly comes back to what you were saying. So the greater the scope of what it is that you are delivering, and the more you can use across all the different ways of processing, the greater chance you're going to tap into every single kid. And when we feel resistance to trying something new, if singing isn't something you're comfortable with, or putting on the froggy hat is out of your comfort zone, knowing those limits and knowing that you've got a discomfort with it. I think often as teachers, we need to sit back and reflect, why am I resistant? What's stopping me? Is it fear? Is it doubt? Am I afraid I'll be laughed at? Am I afraid it won't work? If I try a new pitch like Minnie Mouse, am I going to be laughed out of my school? Or if I do Eeyore? All of those fears and doubts of trying something new all come from a space of self-love. Your subconscious doesn't want you to appear foolish or crazy. Your subconscious is telling you, ooh, don't do that. Stay safe. And we just have to overpower that and know, thank you for coming to tell me that I might risk being foolish. But we need to take risks and try new things. You thank the fear, you thank the doubt, but you embrace that love that you have for yourself. And you know that no matter what you try, you are already an amazing teacher. Each person out there is already amazing. It's only going to enhance it. There should be no fear or doubt. Be fearless, be out there, embracing what it is you do. Your love for your job will shine through and make each session valuable and memorable.
I really love that, because often we do get caught in that place of fear or being self-conscious or not wanting to make a fool out of ourselves, whether actually that can often hold us back from being the best teacher that we can be.
Absolutely. Being human, being allowed to be imperfectly perfect. That is how we are designed. We are all imperfectly perfect for a reason. It's beautiful. Yeah.
So, Penelope, do you have any suggestion for including the non-verbal child
Nonverbal children will have some form of communication, and you'll just need to, if they're nonverbal, you'll have to just, depending on their age, perhaps if it's just a language delay, you then use shorter phrases, keywords, nouns and verbs. So we swim, come now. You just shorten your phrases, you repeat often, you allow time to process. You need to, lots of visual models. And then have a chat to the parents that perhaps there is a communication system that they are using. If they are identified as being nonverbal because they come from having a diagnosis of some sort, they may be using picture symbols. Then you could ask mom or dad, I'm going to do a lesson on froggies. Please insert a picture of swimming with froggies so that when they come, they already know they're going to be in the pool doing something with froggies. So when the big green hat comes out, there's no fear. They've been front loaded. So you just work with each family to see what each one will need.
And what is your opinion about signing and including that within our swimming lessons?
You'll have controversy with that, but I'm a firm believer in total communication. So for me, I'm not a sign language only believer, but I do know that there are, in the deaf and hard of hearing communities, there are people who believe in sign language only. And then within the sign language communities, you're going to have signed exact English versus South African Sign Language. And that's your C sign versus South African Sign Language. You just have to know, again, which one the parents believing in, but I'm a firm believer in total communication. So I have always believed verbal and a sign. So more would be an example where you do the sign and the language. So that we never underestimate a child's ability to talk, and we pair it together. And if it was something like perhaps it was a motor reason why the communication breakdown was occurring, if you start signing, it often will override some of that verb down. And sometimes signing can help bring the language through.
I know that a lot of our swimming teachers, we include signing, especially for the babies and in those parent and baby classes. And we found it like really successful. And yeah, then the kiddie is telling you what they want to do. So I think it is definitely valuable.
Yes, I don't think any additional multimodal form of communication will ever limit us. I really don't. I'm a believer. That's why I say total communication. However it takes the message across, there should be no limits.
So for the kiddies that have a stutter, are there any exercises that we can do in the water to help them?
Not maybe an exercise, but you definitely pause more often. As fluent speakers, we often tell a person who stutters to slow down, which doesn't necessarily help. It's a negative reinforcement to children who stutter that, oh, what you're doing isn't working. Let me remind you as a fluent speaker how to do it. And that's not what they want to hear, but we feel we're doing something good and helping. Rather, by pausing and modeling slower speech, you take the pressure off from communication. And then they don't have that heightened anxiety to talk. There's no rush. You modeled slower speech, so now they know they are allowed to model slower speech, which without even having the negative reinforcement, you've provided the environment for them. And then never finish a sentence for a person who stutters. So let them stutter and continue on with the session. They're not there really to talk, they're there to swim. So get back on task.
That is true. So you have mentioned rhyming, rhythm, singing, and are there any general exercises that we can include in our classes that may help kiddies for their speech? For example, I've noticed that some kiddies battle to put their mouth in a position for blowing bubbles, like we call it fishy lips or kissing lips. Does that help build strength in the muscles to be able to speak properly?
Well, I know for many, many years, oral motor exercises weren't evidence-based. So, as we found our field going more and more towards evidence-based therapy, we were often criticized if we were including all of the blowing bubbles and exercises for oral motor strength and motion. But like I said earlier with the total communication, you don't know which child it's going to work for and which one it's not. And why not? They're in the water. They need to have that safety mechanism for blowing air out instead of taking water in. Blow the bubbles, get the straws out and blow water through straws. All of that, just a kinesthetic feedback for what needs to be happening anyways, and a visual when they see their peers doing it, so it adds the motivation. And just, yeah, add anything that you can think of. I know I used to have a competition in my office who could keep the feather in the air the longest. So keep blowing up a feather, or even balloons, blowing balloons up, the very small ones. And then once your feather gets wet, your game's over. So that could work in a pool too.
I love that. So in my lessons, we blow like ping pong balls across the pool, or use little egg flips that they have to flip over. Also blowing through a straw. And some of my kiddies aren't actually able to physically spit water out. In my swim school, we call it a whale spout. Yeah, so I suppose, as you're saying, we just need to try and include as many things as possible, because different things are going to appeal to different kiddies, and it's all about the children learning and progressing.
But also the added piece is, and I used to send this message home all the time, there are many opportunities beyond the swimming pool for children to learn those skill sets. So being able to blow water out, I highly then encourage all swim teachers to get the parents on board, and you gently pull them aside and say, I noticed they're not blowing very well. Perhaps you could try different straws in the bathtubs. You could try all these activities at home in the bathtub, so that they're not just getting their 1 time a week or 2 times a week practice with you. They're getting multiple opportunities to practice, especially if you're seeing an oral motor weakness. I do know that if you're going to try and strengthen that system, it's not going to happen once or twice a week with you. It's going to need to happen from a habitual standpoint. And then I used to also notice that changing the shape of the straw. So perhaps starting out with a nice big fat straw like they make at McDonald's, and I used to cut them half, or even cut them into thirds. So a small straw with a large hole is much easier start for those kiddies. And then you can lengthen it, or you can go to smaller straws in terms of diameter. And that is how you kind of grade the activity from easier to more difficult, and strengthen the muscles once they've got it. Yeah.
Okay, well, that is so interesting that we can include all those things in our swimming lessons to help our kiddies progress faster, because in the end of the day, it's not just about learning to swim. It's about the total development of that child. And as you say, collaborating with other professions to see how we can include simple things in our lessons that actually benefit the child. So I do love that, and I also agree that it's definitely about education, and especially with the parents too. We can do it in a very sensitive way, and coming from a place of love to help the kids. So I think that is awesome too.
Yeah, you're amazing. I love what you do.
Now, I have to admit that I am definitely your biggest fan when it comes to your book series. Can you tell us more about them?
Well, I decided that I live on a farm, and I wanted to write some of the adventures of what happens on this craziness that I live between the peacocks and the dogs and the horses and the cat, the cow, that's 600 chickens on any given day. So that's the love. I also came from a space of love for my lifestyle that my husband, John the Vet, has created for us, and started putting pen to paper with language-rich rhyming. And that's how the Adventures of Riverlea Farm came to be. And like you say, it's all about the total experience and growing healthy, happy children, preferably outdoors and old-fashioned books.
So I would definitely say don't miss out on these, folks. You need to get this series, and you can even use them as a farm theme in your lessons. So think of all the songs and rhymes and farm noises you can make with the Adventures of Riverlea farm theme. So,
story.
I just want to recap what you have brought to light today. We discussed like the different learning styles and developmental domains, and how we can consider the individual child when we are doing our lesson plans and how we conduct our lessons. And you've also really stressed the importance of varying our classes and dispelling any doubts that we need to overcome our personal fears. And yeah, we can't let fear hold us back from being the best swimming teacher that we can possibly be. So we must just really love ourselves, and by doing that, our customers and our little swimmers will love us too. So Penelope, is there anything else that you would like to add?
Just thank you a million times for what you do for so many of us in inspiring, educating, uniting. It's just such a pleasure to be a part of this, and I just thank you. Go love children, everybody.
So if you have any questions for Penelope, please just drop them in the comments. She will definitely answer them all. And I'm going to drop the link for the Adventures of Riverlea Farm Facebook page into the comments too. So please go and check it out. It is, and it will be an asset to have it as part of your book collection. Every Friday, Penelope goes live on Facebook to do readings from her books, which is amazing. I'm sure your kiddies will love it. So if you've got value from today's video, please like it, tag your friends, and share it. And Penelope, you have really opened our eyes to how we can consider the individual swimmer in our lessons. And it is so important for their mental and their physical growth. So I personally know that I am definitely going to implement what you have suggested here today. And I want to thank you so much for taking the time and just to come out today to consider us and share with us. I've got so much value, and I'm sure all the teachers watching have got so much value today as well. So thank you so much.
Yes, absolute pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye.